of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, in the last 2 weeks, the Prime Minister has failed to specifically raise the issue of Line 5 with any senior American officials he's talked to. 3 calls, no action. 30,000 direct and spin-off jobs in Ontario depend on Line 5. These workers want to know, Mr. Speaker, when is the Prime Minister finally going to stand up for their jobs?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, over the past many years, this government has consistently and effectively stood up for Canadian interests across the table from the American administrations. We've demonstrated our ability to protect steel and aluminum workers, to secure supply management, to protect our cultural exemptions, to renegotiate NAFTA. We will always stand up for Canadian workers and Canadian energy, and we will continue to do engaged actively with the United States administration.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, all the jet fuel at Pearson Airport, jobs at refineries in Montreal and Lévis, 66% of the crude used in Quebec, and zero mention from the Prime Minister in 3 calls with senior U.S. officials. Yesterday, the Natural Resource Minister talked about a Team Canada approach. So when is the Prime Minister finally going to get on the field, talk about Line 5, and stand up for workers in all parts of this country?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we saw this consistently from Conservatives over the past many years, armchair quarterbacking, telling us what we had to do, what we should do, what we would do. We just went ahead and did it. We kept protecting Canadian jobs. We kept standing up for Canadian interests. We delivered on NAFTA. We're delivering on protecting Canadian interests, and we'll continue to do so on Line 5 and on every other issue facing Canada and the U.S.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Actually, Mr. Speaker, you want to know who really did it, showed some leadership? Northern Ireland. In a few hours, they were able to obtain written exemptions from the European Union with respect to vaccine export controls. Friday night, the EU had changed their rules to guarantee vaccine supply to Northern Ireland. It's Tuesday, and all we've gotten from this Prime Minister and the Trade Minister are some verbal assurances that they've raised the matter. With Canada falling further and further behind every week in vaccines, can the Prime Minister get to it and guarantee in writing our supply of vaccines from Europe?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to be able to take this opportunity to reassure Canadians that we indeed received strong assurances from the EU leadership, including Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, that Canada's deliveries of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines would not be disrupted by these new transparency measures that they're bringing forward. We know that we are relying on vaccines from European production plants, and Europe will continue to protect Canada's supply.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Monsieur le Président, nous avons...
Mr. Speaker, we learned that Novavax will probably be able to produce vaccines here in Canada if Health Canada approves the vaccine. The Prime Minister said that the new facilities should produce vaccines by the end of the summer, but the Innovation Minister said by the end of the year. Can the Prime Minister tell Canadians who's telling the truth? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. I was very pleased to be able to visit the facilities last September to announce the federal investments in vaccine production here in Canada. As I said, the construction of that factory should be completed during the summer, and then there should be approval and production of vaccines by the end of the year. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, the investments in a partnership with China, there were investments made, and there was the possibility of a new vaccine being produced in Canada was slow but positive. Canadians are tired of waiting for vaccines because we need the vaccine before we can have an economic recovery. The Liberal government should have a clear and specific plan on vaccine delivery. Why is the Liberal government still behind other countries? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Once again, Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives are completely out in left field and they're just scaremongering. We have made sure by negotiating a lot of contracts with different companies to have more doses per person than any other country. And we will get millions of doses, 6 million by the end of March, as expected, and 20 million by summertime. And everyone should be vaccinated by the end of September this year, because that's the commitment we made. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. All of the territories and provinces, including Quebec, of course, have called for an increase in the federal contributions up to 35% of what it takes to take care of our seniors and people who are sick. The Liberals said no, and what's more, they've imposed Canadian standards. The Conservatives said, let's have a meeting within 100 days of the next election, and obviously the NDP acted like a branch plant of the Liberals. Mr. Speaker, is there no party in Canada that's willing to accept a unanimous request from the territories, provinces, and Quebec? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, as I have said a number of times in the House, and my colleague refuses to hear what I said, yes, we will increase health transfers. And as a matter of fact, we've shown a willingness to do that by increasing investments in an unprecedented fashion. Investments in seniors, in students, in Canadians, in workers. We recognize that there's more to be done in this pandemic, and we will continue to do more. Yes, in the short term, in the immediate, but yes, in the long term as well. And I look forward to those discussions in due course once we get through this crisis. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, what is this all about? National standards. The federal government does not administer any hospitals, any doctors, any nurses. That is not a matter of federal jurisdiction in any sense of the term. Why is it better to have a Canadian standard than a Quebec standard? What can a Canadian do that a Quebecer can't? What is intrinsically superior about being Canadian than a Quebecer? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Perhaps I could point one thing out. Most Canadians and most Quebecers, with the exception of the leader of the Bloc Québécois, know full well that the Canadian Armed Forces had doctors sent in to long-term care facilities in Quebec, and Canadian soldiers worked alongside Quebec doctors, and they helped a lot of seniors. So to say that the federal government has no doctors is completely wrong. It's just a political argument, the lowest form of political argument. We will be there to work with all provinces to protect seniors. The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A recent report indicates that 65% of Greater Toronto Area workers are essential. In fact, Dr. Naheed Dosani indicates that these workers who get COVID-19 are, quote, working in close proximity and with inadequate access to paid sick leave. This is very clear. Paid sick leave will help us stop the spread of COVID-19 and will ensure that we save lives. Now, the Prime Minister says the job is done, that it's already good enough, but the existing program has problems. So will the Prime Minister commit to fixing paid sick leave so it covers all workers who need it?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we brought in paid sick leave for Canadians who aren't covered by their jobs because we know that during this pandemic, people need to be able to make the choice to stay home if they start exhibiting symptoms and know that they can still put food on the table for their families. That's why we moved forward with federal sick leave, but why we're also happy to see many provinces step up to improve the system and to adjust it so it's right for their provinces. We will continue to work hand in hand with the provinces on delivering for Canadians right across the country, because protecting our most vulnerable workers is part of the way not just to keep us safe, but make sure we recover well.
The honourable member for Burnaby South.
Merci.
Thank you. I had a meeting with Premier Legault, and he shared a message as president of the Council of the Confederation, and all premiers all across the country would like to see an increase in health transfers. It's more important than ever during a pandemic to have more investment in healthcare. So my question is simple. Will the Prime Minister boost health transfers, yes or no? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Yes. That's the commitment we've made to all premiers. I know we'll have to increase transfers, and we will continue to increase them as we have done every year. But during the pandemic, it's also the time to provide immediate assistance, and that is why we sent tens of billions of dollars to the provinces to help their healthcare systems get through this pandemic. In the long term, we're very open to holding this discussion, and I have said, yes, we will increase health transfers. When it comes to the details, I look forward to those conversations, but I have said that we will be there to support Canadians. The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le Fjord.